Okay, so your GMO greetings, yet I'll say once again, we thank you once again for joining in with us. For those who are unaware, I am Ojirafo Kwesi Radnehmpata Akan. Ojirafo of NKWAMUA and Maruka, Etifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the Purified Nation, Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So we have a document that we published and it's connected with some of the information in some of the books that we have published to date. For those who are unaware, I've published 31 books. You can download all 31 books for free. The ebook versions from the NKWAMUA page, the publications page on our website. We also have 40 online courses that are archived. So you can access the 40 online courses. Some of them were 6-week courses. Some of them were 4-week courses. Some were 7-week courses. Those are all archived. And then we also have one course coming up, which we'll talk about a little bit later, our Susu Meditation Instructor Certification, where you can be certified as a meditation or a Susu meditation instructor. You can utilize that certification to gain, for self-employment, to teach meditation at different centers, schools, places of business, organizations, and so forth, to get paid for that. So this is why we have the certification course. But we're addressing this topic as part of our holistic health, whole life approach to health and wellness. So let me pull up one of our documents first. And then we'll get into the document we want to focus on tonight. First, I want to just show you one of the books. In fact, one of the books that we utilize in our course, the meditation instructor course. All right, so this is the, all right. So this is the NKWAMUA page on our website. NKWAMUA in the Akan language means book or publications and so forth. So when you go to the NKWAMUA page, you will see that we have the covers of all 31 of our books. And when you click on the cover, it will go directly to the book or to the page where you can get to the book. So our NKWAMUA Whole Life Journal. This is a journal that we publish dealing with holistic health from a physical soundness and spiritual soundness rooted in our culture, centered in our culture. So one of the things that we touch on, let me just pull this up real quick. So Nkwa means life, and Mua in the Akan language means whole. So NKWAMUA is the whole life journal. So we deal with the whole life of the individual. So we have different articles dealing with different aspects of culture and holistic health and spiritual cultivation and so forth. For example, one of the short articles we have in here is talking about this notion of plant physiognomy and how different fruits and vegetables that are in the same shape as specific organs and glands and structures are directly, impactful for those organs, glands, and structures. So when you see walnuts in the same shape of the brain, you'll find that walnuts are actually a super brain food. They have these omega-3 and 6 fatty acids that are directly necessary for brain function, high brain functioning, and so forth. So we go into detail about that and the various things that, that are, positive with regard to consuming walnuts and how they affect us. We have an article dealing with melanin, abatum, melanin, and how different food choices, as well as behavioral choices, positively or negatively impact, the melanin content. We don't only have melanin that makes our skin, black, brown, and so forth, but all of our organs and systems have melanin as well, so we even talk about that. But the reason I brought that up is because we wanted to show you that the philosophical approach is the whole life approach. NKWAMUA, whole life. So physical soundness, spiritual soundness, centered in cultural awareness. Now, part of that is dealing with our internal health. And this particular article that we're going to touch on tonight, that we're going to go through tonight, part of our ahooden Sim series, is dealing with weight loss and ancestral ritual governed by the divinity, the Torot, the goddess Yaa. She's called Yaa in the Akan tradition, in the Hoodoo tradition. She's called Wadjet in ancient Kemet. She's called Oya in the Yoruba tradition. She's called Avejida in the Vodun tradition and so forth. But we want to get into that. So let me go back to the article. We have a WordPress site. We published a number of articles on our WordPress site, and this is one of them. Ahooden Sim, which is a term designating health, weight loss, and ancestral ritual, the divinity, the Abosom, the goddess Yaa-Wadjet. So this is the female divinity Yaa. Hold on a second. Okay, so this is the female divinity Yaa, called Wadjet in ancient Kemet. Her in the anthropomorphic form, but she can also take the form of her sacred animal totem, the animal sacred, one of the animals that are sacred to her, the cobra and so forth, the hooded cobra. You'll see that cobra also on the headdress of the king and queen mother, the Ainsu and Ainsut and so forth. In her totemic form right here, she's the cobra, hooded cobra with the wings and the solar disk on her head and so forth. And this is the planet Uranus, which is the planet Yaa, as we call it in Akan and so forth. And she governs that, which includes the day Yada, or so-called Thursday. So let's get into it. Now, we start off talking about how the great deal of financial and emotional exploitation of the Afuraitkaitnit, meaning African Black woman, in connection to health, wellness, self-esteem, and more. This is why we put the article out. We've been dealing with holistic health for, a couple of decades. So including, I've been a vegan for over 20 years, people in our organization, vegans and so forth. We've been dealing with holistic health, part of the dealing with ancestral religion. And when we talk about ancestral religion, or Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion, we're talking about fundamentally the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance. That means through ritual, you incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities you need to incorporate in order to align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, you reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities you need to reject in order to restore balance to your thoughts, intentions, and actions, and thus realign yourself with divine order. So the essence of ancestral religion, the term we use is nanasom, but whether it's the Akan tradition, which is what we practice, which includes the Hoodoo tradition in North America, which is Akan ancestral religion from Ghana and Ivory Coast. We simply brought our Akan religion to North America and continued Akan ancestral religion under the Akan term Undu, which later came to be pronounced Hoodoo. But whether you practice the Akan tradition or Yoruba tradition or Ewe tradition or Fang tradition or Fula tradition or Igbo tradition, whatever it is, Gullah, Geechee, and so forth, fundamentally, wherever Black people exist on earth, the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. These are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. And our ancestral religion upholds our culture or way of life. And our amamre, or culture, our way of life, is the divine acceptance, the love, the law of order, and the divine rejection, the hatred, the repulsion of disorder and its purveyors. So we incorporate those things that are in harmony with us, and we repel those things that are not, that will create disharmony within us. Just like you inhale, take in oxygen and so forth, take advantage of that, but you exhale carbon dioxide. You consume food and take advantage of the nutrients and so forth and become empowered, fueled, strengthened, fortified, but then you expel or you eliminate waste. We accept divine order, we accept or we incorporate divine law so we can align ourselves with divine order, but we reject disorder. So the divine acceptance, the law, the love of order, the divine rejection, the hate, the repulsion of disorder, that is ancestral culture. And the way we affect and stay in alignment with our ancestral culture, our way of life, accepting order and rejecting disorder, is through the ritual process. We align every thought, intention, and action every moment of every day with divine order. And when we make legitimate mistakes, we engage the ritual process, ancestral religious practice, to ritually incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate to align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And then through ritual, we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to restore our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. So part of that process is, what we consume mentally, what we consume spiritually, what we consume physically. When we live in harmony with divine order and we operate just like animals operate according to their nature. They consume what they are naturally drawn to consume. They don't overconsume. They don't underconsume. They naturally function in a normal fashion. We are the same way. We have a specific form based on our clans. We have specific nutritional, needs and so forth, not just as a human being, but human beings from specific ancestral clans, specific spirit-genetic blood circles, and we're naturally inclined to, consume certain things and disinclined from other things. So when we embrace white culture, they like consume everything. It doesn't matter how much you consume or what it is, just whatever feels good, do it. And when you're conditioned in that way, you become self-destructive. So we have all kinds of, preventable diseases that normally we would not have. All kinds of, heart disease and high blood pressure and diabetes and emphysema and, all these obesity and so forth, all these things that if we were not embracing white culture, embracing the diet and the culture and the mindset of our enemies, we wouldn't be suffering from these things. So we need to get back to our normal, natural way of functioning. Just like if you saw an animal in a lab and they were force feeding the animal all kinds of, cooked and processed foods, the animal will get huge and gain weight and be like a sloth and so forth. But when they get back into nature, they will consume the things they naturally consume. They will move about the way they naturally move about. They will run and, engage with other animal life naturally and get back to normal. So we get back to normal. Part of that process is the things that we consume physically and spiritually. So we've been involved in, veganism for over 2 decades and so forth. There was a time when I was doing some personal training, on the side, back in the day and so forth. So we've always been engaged in this, dealing with holistic health. We don't, as part of our religious practice, we don't drink alcohol, we don't smoke, we don't do any kind of drug and so forth. But we also don't over consume, we don't under consume. Everything is about balance. It's about ma'ah and ma'ad. And because the whites in our offspring have set things in motion where we're conditioned to be self-destructive, they're constantly pushing all manner of drugs upon our people, trying to make us believe that's normal to consume, to smoke, to drink, to do all kinds of different illicit drugs and so forth, as well as to overconsume food and so forth, to be self-destructive. You only live once, that kind of foolishness. Of course, we live more than once. We return through our blood circles, through Bebra, reincarnation, and so forth. So they're constantly trying to keep us self-destructive, because when you have people who are self-destructive, it's easier to control people who are self-destructive. So when they're addicted to foods and addicted to other mood and mind altering substances. So when we get back to normal, we can focus on what's important, focus on ourselves, our families, our communities, and our ancestral nation building restoration. So we don't smoke, we don't drink, we don't engage in any kind of drug use, we don't engage in self-destructive consumption practices either. Now, part of the process of living in harmony with cycles, before we get to this article, let me just pull this up for you. This is from one of our courses, the Hoodoo course, part 5, talking about Ntane, elemental asceticism in the Hoodoo tradition. So the ascetic tradition, where you have a strict approach to purification and so forth, that doesn't come from Hinduism, it doesn't come from Buddhism, it doesn't come from any pseudo-esoteric tradition in the West. They learned about any aspect of asceticism from the ancient Kemetic priestesses and priests in ancient Kemet, and they saw us purifying ourselves and on a multiple times a day, fasting, engaging in ritual prayer, ritual chant, ritual dance, and so forth, engaging in divinity, spirit possession, spirit communication. But this notion of ritual purification, they saw that when they invaded our cultures, and they tried to incorporate a perverted aspect of that, and then began to pretend like they came up with the ascetic tradition. So when you think about, spiritual or ritual ascetics, where they're fasting for certain periods, praying, celibacy, ritual celibacy, and so forth for certain periods, they'll associate that with Hinduism or Jainism or Taoism or Buddhism and so forth. We were doing that before the White Nile Spring existed on Earth. And it's part of every one of our Afuraitkaitnit ancestral religious traditions. So, Ntane, in the Akan language, means straight, straightness, right, convenient, and so forth. Ntane, pa, good judgment. Tainmu, the act of judging or judgment, meaning sacred, good judgment, making proper judgments, and so forth. But straightness, that has to do with the ascetic tradition and so forth, in Hoodoo tradition. So we gave some definitions about that, and what ascetic actually means. But here's a text from ancient Kemet. There's a ritual invocation in this particular chapter of the Runupert and Meru, so-called Book of Coming Forth by Day, misnomer Book of the Dead. And after the entire ritual invocation is laid out, and it's something to be read, memorized, of course, and chanted as well in ritual, the text says the following. It says, shall be recited this chapter by a person, Abu, which means purified, and Jira, washed, one who has not eaten animal flesh or fish. Then it talks about, behold, you shall make a scarab of green stone with its rim plated with gold and so forth. So they talk about the ritual asumain or talisman utilized in that particular ritual practice. But there's a notion of, there's certain ritual practices where before you engage in the ritual practice, you purify yourself, you cleanse yourself, you're not consuming any meat, you're not consuming any fish and so forth. Other ones will talk about how you haven't engaged in any sexual activity for a certain period. So your energy is not dispersed, it's in control and so forth for what you need that energy for that specific purpose and so forth. So this notion of fasting, praying, ritual celibacy, cyclical fasting, and so forth, that's always been a part of our tradition. This predates Hinduism by thousands of years. So, as well as Buddhism and Taoism and Jainism and so forth. So, Now, we just want to show that that's a part of our tradition. That's not every single day, but there are cleansing processes that we go through. Just like in springtime when you have spring cleaning, but you also do a detox and fast for a certain number of days to, purify yourself, purge yourself and so forth, so you can go into the new season, strong and vibrant and, focused and balanced and so forth. Certain times of the year we engage in that tradition, purification, detoxing and so forth. Same thing with cyclical fasting, ritual celibacy and so forth. There are certain things that we engage in. Now, we have a chart here, our per Ankh-Nut cosmogram, the 4 different positions of the sun, but also referencing the elements Oja, which is fire, Nsio, which is water, Frama, which is air, Asase, which is earth. They're represented by the 4 positions of the sun, like sunrise, the sun at noon, the hottest time of the day, sunset, and then the sun in the underworld. But then you also have, the spring equinox, which is the yellow circle, the spring equinox around March. Then you have the summer solstice, the hottest time of the year, the longest day of the year and so forth, June 20th, 21st. Then you have the white circle, that's akin to the sunset, but also the autumn equinox, 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness, another balancing point. And then the black circle is the deep darkness. That's the winter solstice, December 20th, the longest day or longest night of the year, 15 hours of darkness and only 9 hours of sunlight and so forth. So, but those 4 positions of the sun during the day, as well as during the cycle of the year, are also associated with these elements. But that also governs our day, it governs our month, it governs our year, it governs our behavioral cycle. So, and when you have symbols like the Okra symbol in the Akan tradition and Ohini and Niwa symbol in the Akan tradition, it references that ancient cosmogram that many Afuraitkaitnit groups use, but the Akan use it as well. This is a gold Okra-Komwade pendant from the Akan tradition that carries that symbolism within it. So you look at March 20th, spring equinox, sunrise, sprouting. That's part of the sprouting cycle when everything sprouts and so forth. But let's start at September 22nd. Just to give you a notion of the cycles that the earth goes through and our bodies go through during the year as well as during the day. So if the sun is at the highest point in the sky, around noon, the hottest time of the day and so forth, and the sun begins to set and it crosses the horizon at sunset, and the sun goes into the quote unquote underworld and penetrates and goes into the underworld and so forth. So the sun setting in the west is akin to a seed being planted in the ground. That's a conception. That's the evening time, but that's also during the year, the autumn equinox. This is the noon, hottest time of the day. For the year, that's the hottest time of the year. That is the summer solstice, June 20th, 21st. Hottest time, longest day of the year, 15 hours of sunlight, 9 hours of darkness and so forth. And then the sunlight begins to decrease daily until you get to September 22nd or 23rd, depending on the year. And that's when there are 12 hours of darkness and 12 hours of light. It's the equinox, equal nights. It's the first day of autumn. The male divinity Atem, the female divinity Atemet in ancient Kemet is where you get Atem or autumn from and so forth. They govern that time period. So that's akin to the sun setting. It's the end of the warm cycle, and it's the beginning of the cool cycle of the year. Because it's akin to the sun setting, it's the harvest time, but it's also the seeding time. When you harvest the fruits and the yams and so forth, that's a harvest time, it's a celebration. But you also take the seeds out of what you have harvested, and then you plant them so that, later on in the year, you can have crops once again. So the planting of the seed is akin to the sun setting in the west and penetrating the earth and vitalizing the earth and so forth. that is akin to a conception. And this is why in September 22nd, that's the conception time. That is our New Year's Day. So in our Akan tradition in North America, New Year's Day is September 22nd or September 23rd, whatever the first full day of fall is, autumn, Antamet, that is the first day of our new year. 100 days before Europeans celebrate the new year in January. January 1st, the coldest, darkest time of the year at midnight, the darkest time of the 24-hour cycle. Only cave dwellers would come out when it's cold and dark and icy and so forth and say Happy New Year. That's a caveman, Iceman inheritance. We don't do that. The end of the warm cycle, we harvest. There's a celebration of the harvest and the food is distributed and so forth. So that's the end of one cycle, the warm cycle. We take the seeds out and then plant them. That's a conception time, and that is the beginning of a new cycle. So September 22nd is the conception time, and we have our New Year, 7-day New Year observance that begins September 16th through the 22nd, or September 17th through the 23rd, and the 23rd is New Year's Day. Afe Shia Pa or Ubrajira Pa, which is, our New Year's Day. So that's the conception time. So that's September 22nd, autumn equinox, sunset, seeding, harvest. When you go up to, you're at the winter time, that's like the seed germinating and then going deep down, the roots going deep down in the soil to grab the nutrients and the water and so forth to nourish itself. And then the shoots start coming up. And by the time you get to the spring, the shoots break through the surface of the soil and show themselves for the first time. That is spring, that is sprouting. There's a celebration. We have the Apo observance around the spring equinox and so forth in the Akan tradition, the Hoodoo tradition in North America. That is the sprouting time. So that's the second balancing point of the year, 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness. The first balancing point is fall, autumn. Equal nights, 12 hours of darkness, 12 hours of sunlight. When you get to December 20th, it's 15 hours of darkness, only 9 hours of sunlight. But after December 25th, you have the darkness for the first, second, and third, and fourth, and so forth, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th. But then on December 25th, the sun begins to grow. Well, the sun is quote unquote born. This is, of course, where they said that God's son is born every December 25th. Of course, Jesus is a fictional cartoon character who never existed. So, of any race whatsoever. So, the sun is born on December 25th. Sunlight increases. The sun grows every day, a minute or a minute and a half. So, by the time you get to spring, 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness is a balancing point, equinox, and so forth. And then it continues to increase until you get to the summer. So that's the seeding point in the West. In the East, you have the sprouting point. That's the second balancing point, and so forth. Now, hold on a second. So we talk about that, and we also talk about the midpoints as well. But winter solstice, midnight, rooting. You get to March 20th, spring equinox, sunrise, sprouting. June 21st, summer solstice, noon, full flowering, and so forth. So I just wanted to show you that, because not only does it deal with the daily cycle and the yearly cycle, but that's also how we govern ourselves. We rise with the sun in the morning, around that time and so forth. We engage in our most vigorous activity as you start getting to the middle of the day and so forth, when the sun is at its peak. You start cooling down in the evening point, which is, the sun setting and so forth around 6 p.m. And then you go into the underworld where the black sun is, and you're going to sleep at night so you can rejuvenate, germinate, rejuvenate, and so forth, so you can sprout or spring up back in the morning. But you also go deal with that cycle with regard to consumption, not only behavior and activity, but consumption. We follow these cycles. We don't overconsume. You engage in exercise if you can around the hottest time of the day and so forth. Your heaviest meal around the hottest time of the day so you can burn it up and so forth. Sun sets, you cool down. But we follow these natural cycles. Every aspect of our lives, including the way our diets. Now, so let's okay. Cut off for a second. I just want to make sure everything is straight. All right. So now let's get back to the article. So ahooden sim, matters of health, weight loss, and ancestral rituals. So now that you have that basic understanding of the way we culturally, engage life on every level, including, the way we consume food, it's all based on our cultures. Everything is spiritual, as you're going to see. But when we embrace, the culture of our enemies, the whites and offspring, then we start engaging in behavior that's self-destructive. So then they give us solutions to the self-destructive behavior that they conditioned us to embrace. And their solutions are another level of self-destructive activity. So there's a great deal of misinformation, financial and emotional exploitation of the Afuraitkaitnit African Black woman. And when I wrote this article, it was in reference to people were asking me, some sisters were asking me about weight loss and so forth. So I wanted to put this article out, but it applies to men as well. But in connection to health, wellness, self-esteem, and more in the area of diet and weight loss, some estimate that it is a $66 billion industry. It is based on creating emotional and mental dependence, which leads to financial exploitation. Most often, the desired outcomes are not realized. Some are aware that a number of years ago, I mentioned this earlier, I was a personal trainer as a side occupation. Just something extra to do in addition to the work that we normally do. But insight into how individuals are exploited in that field was gained through that experience. So it is structured to create an emotional and mental dependence, also on an individual trainer, which leads to financial exploitation. So they will try to get you hooked on a trainer where you're dependent on a trainer. You can't do anything on your own. You need to pay somebody to train you and so forth. There's nothing wrong with somebody giving you some pointers, but fundamentally, you're an adult. You can work out yourself. You can exercise yourself. You're not dependent on anybody to, purify yourself and get yourself back to normal. Now, but they want you to believe that you're dependent. So you're financially exploited. So we say in all areas of life, we have an ancestral values based approach to what we call ahooden. Eden in Akan means hard. Ahooden means the self. So in the Akan language, ahooden, that's the term for health. But specifically, how it's actually defined is Eden means hard and ahooden means self. So the hard self, meaning the hard body. If your body is a quote unquote hard body, a strong body, powerful body, and so forth, then you have a healthy body. So ahooden literally means the self, ahooden, external self that is eden, that's hard or strong. So, but in general, it's translated as health in English. Now, so that's what we say, ahooden sim, issues or matters of ahooden, of health. Now, but when we talk about hard or strong or toned, it's also tuned. Organs, glands, bones, tissues, and so forth. Now, and that also references for us this notion of if the body is toned, if someone says they have a toned body, In our culture, it also means you have a tuned body. It's in tune with the rhythms and energy of creation. As the abosom, the forces in nature move through creation harmoniously, we live in a harmonious created order and so forth. We need to operate in harmony with that order as well. So it's like a wind chime. If you have a wind chime and it's clear and clean, when the wind blows through it, you have, harmonious sounds that emanate from that. They're tuned and so forth. If the wind chime was filled up with leaves and mud or dirt and so forth, and the wind tried to go through it, you won't have any sounds at all. You have to purify yourself, clean yourself, cleanse yourself and so forth. So when the divine living energy of Yonkumpon and the Yonkunton, or Ra and Ra et the Creator and Creatress, move through us, we reverberate that harmonious energy that's natural for us to reverberate. So when we talk about being toned, we're also talking about being tuned in that context. Hold on one second. All right. So we give the definition there of ancestral religion, the ritual incorporation of divine law, the ritual restoration of divine balance. We talked about that in the beginning. So every aspect of our life, we have a whole life approach to health and wellness and so forth. So when it comes to weight loss, the veneer of white ill culture and its corollary exploitation must be removed. Number one, it is not difficult to lose weight and keep it off. The industry must make you believe the falsehood that it is difficult in order to make you dependent upon them emotionally, mentally, and thus ripe for financial exploitation. So if you don't believe that it's very difficult to keep it off, then you won't have any incentive to spend money with them. That's $66 billion. But if you believe that it's so difficult and so hard and only a certain kind of person can, be healthy and so forth, because they've created this false narrative, then you can be exploited. Now, 2, you do not need to spend money on their diet programs, plans, groups, systems, surgeries, trainers, etc. Your capacity to achieve health and wellness is free, 100% free. You don't have to be dependent on anybody. Number 3, you do not have to have a special kind of discipline to lose weight. Totally fraudulent. Psychologists are employed by advertising agencies to craft messages to make you believe falsely that only a certain special kind of individual, special quote unquote, can be successful, while most people, quote unquote, need the assistance of the industry. For every single Black person of any age can be successful in achieving optimal health goals, inclusive of weight loss, through engaging a simple process rooted in our own ancestral culture. Everything we need to address any issue we can find within our culture. We don't need to look outside of our ancestral culture for any manner of healing, whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, mental, or spiritual. We don't call ourselves, Afrocentric, African-centered, cultural, and so forth. But then when we run into a problem, we have to go to a Western-trained psychologist to get their theory of, behavior and so forth. And they try to infuse you with their false narratives of what that is. That's nonsense. We have that within our own culture. We have natural approaches to rebalancing ourselves spiritually, which includes mentally and emotionally within our own culture. If we have issues with regard to health and wellness, of course, in the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akan tradition, and Juju tradition, and various others, we have root workers, root men, root women, and so forth, natural health, the entire natural health movement, alternative health movement, homeopathic movement, and so forth. That began in the Western Hemisphere because when they enslaved our people, we had the medicinal knowledge of plant life and mineral life and animal life and so forth. They were dependent on us to heal our people who were enslaved on plantations and so forth, because they were using us as property. If one of us got sick, they didn't know how to cure the person. They didn't know the medicinal use of thousands of plants and herbs and so forth, our people brought that knowledge with us. So we healed our own people. Those of us who are intelligent, we not only healed our own people, but we took the medicinal use of plant life and mineral life and so forth, made it into the kind of medicines, poisons and poisoned the so-called slave master, killed the family and staff, and freed ourselves from enslavement. So let me go back down. So everything we need to overcome and address any issue is in our culture. If people have to claim to be practicing Afuraitkaitnit, or African culture, or Pan-African culture, or ancestral religion, spirituality, and so forth, but every time there's an issue, they have to go outside of our culture to go to the enemy, that means they're not grounded in their culture, because every answer can be found in our culture. We are the first people. We established all the sciences and arts and healing practices and so forth, and they have continued within our culture. Now, we're talking about the divinity Yaa, who is called Wadjet in ancient Kemet. And you will see in this image, not only do we have this winged cobra and so forth, the solar disk, and her sacred animal totem, the cobra, but you also see the image of the digestive system, the esophagus going down into the stomach and the intestines and so forth. So you have this reared cobra inside of your body, consuming and swallowing, just like a snake will consume an animal larger than it and so forth, and in width and so forth, and pull that animal in and consume it and break it down and so forth. You have a little cobra inside of you that's a sacred animal totem, so to speak, the shrine for Wadjet in the body. In this context, the digestive system, her shrine in your body is for the Afuraitkaitnit person, the African Black person, is the digestive system. Major shrine for Wadjet in the body. Now, so as we said, she's called Wadjet in ancient Kemet. She's called Oya, Yorisha Oya in Yoruba. She's called Avejida in Ewe in the Vodun tradition. And she's the abosom, the divinity Yaa, the goddess Yaa in Akan culture. So when we look at the 7-day week in the Akan tradition, and this is our chart, when you see Akan people who are, for example, my soul name Kradin is Kwesi, it doesn't just mean I was born on a Sunday. It means I was born on a Sunday because the divinity that governs the sun, the major divinity, I was born on his day and therefore carry his energy into the world. So I have a soul name associated with that divinity, Awusi. So Kwa, Asi, or Kwesi, this is servant of, messenger of the divinity Awusi and so forth. If somebody is born on Ben-Nada or Aben-Nada, which is Tuesday, the planet Benna or Abena, governed by the spirit Abena, who's called Sekhmet in Kemet, and Benna, who's called Heru-Behudet in Kemet. They are called Ogun and Iyami-Abini in the Yoruba tradition. But these spiritual forces that animate the planet, so-called Mars, but we call Benna, Abena. If a male or female is born on Tuesday, Benna-Da, the day, the Da of the divinity Benna and Abena. If it's a male, he's Kwa Benna, a servant of the divinity Benna, so Kwa Benna. If it's a female, she's Abena or Abenawa or Abenaba and so forth. She's a child of the divinity Abena or Sekhmet, and she carries that fiery energy into the communal sphere. If someone is born on Thursday, if a female is born on Thursday, she's named after the female divinity that animates the planet Yaa, which governs Thursday on Earth and so forth. So every day of the week, every 7 days, the planet, sun, moon, and planets move into different positions, and their energy bathes the Earth at the first hour of sunrise. So Sunday is the sun, and Monday is the moon, and Tuesday is Abenada Mars, Benna and Abena Mars. Wednesday is Awuku and Akua, which is Mercury. Thursday is Yao, Ya, and Aba, which is Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune, and so forth. Friday is Afi, which is Venus. Saturday is Amini, which is so-called Saturn. So the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that govern that 7-day cycle that affect all natural cycles on Earth, the spirits that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies give their energy to them. So we know, for example, the moon, the gravitational pull of the moon affects the rising and falling of the tides on Earth. So the tides rise and fall. That also happens within our bodies. The tides we're 70+% water. The tides rise and fall within our bodies and so forth. And when you have a retention of more water, you're cooler. That affects your spiritual and mental and emotional disposition. You're more internalized and contemplative and so forth. When you burn up that water, you're more fired up. Your spiritual disposition and emotional and mental is more externalized and fiery and so forth. So we know the moon has that direct effect on the planet Earth. We also understand that the various planetary bodies have a similar effect, but their own unique effect on the Earth and us as inhabitants of Earth, and the spiritual forces that animate the solar, lunar, and planetary orbs have an effect on our spirit bodies. That's for Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people exclusively. So this is why in our Akan tradition, the day of the week that you're born on is an indication that you were assigned to this specific divinity and sent into the world on his or her day to indicate to the community this ancestor or ancestress who has just returned, their spirit is governed by this divinity, and this is why they were born on this day, to let the people know. So Yada Thursday is governed by the divinity Ya, as you can see in our chart. Which is Yaa-Wadjet, the planet Uranus and so forth. And you see the 11 male and female divinities also govern the 11 major body systems in Afuraitkaitnit people. And let me give you a better example of that chart right quick so you can see it more clear. So this is our Ahooden bosom page. We wrote a couple of books, parts 1 and part 2 on the Ahooden bosom, the male and female deities that govern the 7 days of the week. We have articles on each one of them. We talk about the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies, their names in the Akan tradition. This is Amen and Amenet, by the way, the great Father and great Mother Supreme Being. We give the chart of the different names like Kwesi and Kwame and Ajua and Akosua and Kwabena and Abena and all of that, and the attributes. We show their relationships, their actual corollaries in the Yoruba tradition, Ewe tradition, in ancient Kanit and Kemet. But here's the chart. So we show the solar, lunar, planetary body and the spiritual force that animates the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. We show their names in Akan, their sacred statuary in Akan, Awusi Ajua, Abena Abena, Akua Awuku, Yao Ya, Yao Aba Ya, Afi Amemen. And then we show their popular names in the language and culture of ancient Kemet, which is Asar and Aset, Sekmet, Heru Bedeti, Nebet Het, Set, Heru, Nekabet, Wachet, Het, Heru, and Amen. We also show the 11 major body systems that they govern. These are the shrines of these spirits within your bodies: the endocrine system, reproductive system, lymphatic, immune, renal, nervous, cardiovascular, respiratory, digestive, exocrine, and skeletal. And also there are sacred numbers in the Akan tradition that go into 1 through 11. So the sacred Nkane Sem, which will be translated as numerology, but Nkane Sem, the sacred numbers associated with these different divinities and so forth. So whenever we talk about, forces in creation, we're also talking about biology. When you study the deities of ancient Kanit and Kemet, Nubian Egypt, or anywhere in Afuraitkaitnit or in the Hoodoo tradition and so forth, you're not only studying the forces in nature, but you're studying their shrines in nature, which is the sun, the moon, the various planets, the black substance of space, the oceans, the rivers, the atmosphere, the thermosphere, the magnetosphere, the inner core of Earth, the inner core of Earth, the lower mantle, upper mantle, lower crust, upper crust, the various geological features of Earth and so forth. Everything that has to do with the structure of creation. When we talk about the forces in nature, they govern all natural things in creation. We're studying all of creation when we're talking about these forces in nature, as well as our spirit bodies. So you're studying geology, you're studying, biology, you're studying astronomy, you're studying all kinds of disciplines when you talk about the forces in creation. So you see that Yaa, the female divinity Yaa, governs the planet Uranus. She's Yaa-Wadjet and Kemet, Yaa and Akan, and governs the digestive system. So I just want you to see that. All right. Now, one of her symbols is the winged serpent with the solar disk. And here in the Medusa, you see the little papyrus leaf, or the papyrus plant right here, and the two reeds. So that's watch. And then it's the E sound, and the loaf of bread up here is the T, and the little egg represents the female divinity. So that's Wachit, or Wadjet, and so forth. That's one of her sacred symbols. That's from the Temple of Khonsu in Ta'apet, so-called Thebes. We did a broadcast on Khonsu and Wadjet, the full moon and the summer solstice is on this channel. We did that back in June and so forth, so you can check that out. We were talking about her wings, solar disk, cobra form and so forth. But hold on a second. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to make this. Okay. Okay, so we're talking about how, they govern these natural features of creation, the different 11 shrines in our bodies. They also govern the black earth, river waters, ionosphere, Earth's inner core, the red earth, rain waters, Earth's outer core, winds, magnetosphere, stratosphere, and polar axis. So those features of Earth in order are the same 11 divinities. So these 11 major body systems, that's their shrines in our physical body. And then that list of black earth, which is Awusi, Alsar, river waters, Adwa, Alset, ionosphere, Benna, which is Herubedeti, Ogun, Earth's inner core, which is Sekhmet, Abena, red earth, which is Awuku, rain waters, which is Akua, the Set and Nebuchadnezzar, Earth's inner core, which is Heru, which is the divinity Yao, the winds, we're talking about the winds and magnetosphere, we're talking about Yah and Abba, the stratosphere, which is Het Heru, which is Afi, and the polar axis, which is Amen. Those same 11 divinities, they govern the 11 parts of our physical bodies, but they also govern those 11 features of Earth as well. So she's shown with the winged serpent, references her role in the body as contributing to our magnetic field, the magnetosphere through the electromagnetic energy of our life force. So when you have a winged serpent, the serpent is that, magnetic energy. And then you have the winged serpent, that's electromagnetic energy. That's the magnetosphere, like the magnetic field that surrounds the earth. Well, we have a magnetosphere surrounding our bodies. And let me give you an image of that so you can see it. We have a separate article on the female divinity Yaa. We go into some detail about her and the planet that she governs, her name in ancient Kemet in the Medutu, its definition and so forth, fire-spitting cobra. You see her on the head of the sovereigns and so forth. But the papyrus plant in the form of a cobra as well. So you see the vulture and the cobra. You see the head of the vulture and the cobra on the head of the fire-spitting cobra protecting the sovereign and so forth. That's Yaa-Wadjet. But here you see the winged cobras. And that's the magnetosphere of Earth. And we have a magnetosphere as well. So when you're expanding and contracting your lungs, it's like the expansion and contraction of the wings of a bird inside your body, and it's fanning the flames of that life force energy within you. And that contributes to your electromagnetic field. Just like the winds on Earth, the jet stream that's whipping around the planet and so forth, generating partly, responsible for the magnetic field. Of course, the thermodynamics within the core of Earth generates that electromagnetic field around the planet and so forth, but the winds participate in that. So when they talk about Oya governing the winds and the tempests and the hurricanes, and Wadjet as a winged serpent dealing with the winds, wing, but then that wave, electromagnetic wave body of the serpent, that's a winged wave. That's an electromagnetic. Electro, which is the winged, and then the solar disk on the head and so forth. Let me go back up so you can see that. So you see NKWAMUA with the moon on her head, but you'll see, which is her twin sister, but then you'll see Wadjet with the solar disk. So you have that electromagnetic, the wave body of the serpent is the magnetic wave and so forth. And the solar disk is that electric, energy. So electromagnetic wave energy, that is the magnetosphere that surrounds our bodies. That's the first line of defense, first point of communication, that energy that precedes you and so forth. It's like the sun has a, aura, and you have an electromagnetic field and aura. The sun has a corona. That's the first point of contact you have with individuals. Now, just wanted you to see that, but that winged serpent references her role in the body as contributing to our magnetic field, magnetosphere, through the electromagnetic energy of our life force. The serpent is her Achinebwa, which is her sacred animal totem. That digestive system is formed as a giant serpent within the body. This is the structure entity through which we gather our fuel. The wings on the serpent reference the role of the lungs, where the fanning of the fire of our life force energy through the breath occurs. The serpentine wave of digestion is electric. Then you fan the fire of the lungs and so forth, and that generates magnetism. So you have that sacred serpent within you. You're fanning the flames of the life force energy within you through the digestive system, and you're fanning that fire, and that generates magnetism within your body and so forth. Now, when we align with the divinity Yaa, we call her Nana Yaa, the elderess Yaa and so forth, we align with the Abosom, the divinity who governs the fuel and fire of digestion and energy distribution for the continuity of our existence. So in this particular context, this force in creation that we invoke And Akan people invoke Nana Ya on a regular basis. Yoruba people invoke her as Oya on a regular basis. They have festivals for Oya. She has her own dances and songs and so forth. People who practice Vodun invoke Avejida on a regular basis. In ancient Kemet, we invoke Yaa-Wadjet on a regular basis. When you invoke this divinity, this force in creation, and align your spirit with hers, when you engage in ritual invocation through ritual prayer or ritual chant or pouring libation to her, including her in your libation and so forth, you're realigning your spirit with this force that governs the magnetosphere of Earth, the electromagnetic field of Earth and so forth, and the winds and so forth, but also the electromagnetic field in your body and that digestive system that's generating that fuel that fires up that magnetic field within your body. The same divinity that governs harmonious digestion. If you're out of harmony because you're consuming food out of cycle and creating discordance within your physical body, it's time to align with the divinity, the force in your body that governs digestion, and that fuel and fire that governs your magnetosphere. So the fuel and fire of digestion and energy distribution, because you can digest food and you generate fire, but then the wings of the serpent fan the flames and it disseminates that energy throughout your system. So we say, yet we also tangentially align this fuel and fire necessary to build ourselves, tone ourselves, and burn away impurities, fat, bacteria, and more. It is through the winged serpent that we can restore our toned serpentine form and aerobic or wind wellness internally and externally. So she's dealing with the fuel and fire and so forth that burns away impurities, burns away negative bacteria and so forth. Also burns away, debris, but also burns away fat and so forth, the fuel and fire, fanning that, but also, burns away emotional, energetic units that are, creating disorder within your energetic body as well. So, but we restore our toned serpentine form. That's aerobic and wind as well. She's governing the magnetosphere, which includes the winds, just like the magnetosphere around Earth includes the jet stream that moves around Earth. Well, the winds, when you breathe and expand and contract your lungs, that is the aerobic aspect of it. So when you talk about aerobic exercise and getting your wind up, whether you're running or engaged in aerobic activity, she governs that as well with her wings. So when you align with this divinity, she's the key to this notion of burning up impurities, including weight loss and so forth, burning up negative projections that are forced on you by other individuals or entities, or internalized conditionings you brought up from childhood or traumatic experiences that you need to neutralize and burn away and so forth. But you can burn that up so you can realign yourself with proper digestion and so forth. Now, so as you can see, when we naturally deal with health and wellness, who is the spiritual force that governs, burning up, impurities, including physiologically fat, bacteria, impurities, and also spiritually? She's the fire-spitting cobra. Let's go back to right quick. Hold on a second. Fire-spitting cobra, spitting venom and so forth. Before you could even get close enough to the Per'a, so-called pharaoh, the Ensu, the king, Ensu, the queen mother, and so forth, they have this spiritual force on the head region, the fire-spitting cobra, and that force and so do the deities as well and so forth, but that force will burn up the energy of the enemy trying to attack you before they can get close enough to you. Similar to the solar disk, the sun itself, millions of degrees Fahrenheit or whatever, but or hundreds of thousands of degrees Fahrenheit, but the corona of the sun is millions of degrees Fahrenheit. So if something was traveling close to the sun, it would get burned up in the corona, because the corona itself, that glowing corona that surrounds the sun, is hotter than the body of the sun itself. So something moving towards the sun will get burned up in the corona before it could even get to the body of the sun. You have an electromagnetic field, just like the field of Earth, it repels, asteroids and so forth, or even if they get into the atmosphere, they get burned up before they hit the surface of Earth sometimes and so forth, get burned up in the atmosphere. You have a fire-spitting cobra, a force that you can project your energy to repel other individuals or entities with their projections before they can enter and penetrate your physical and spiritual body. Just like you have two magnets on a table, when the light polarities are facing, if you put one magnet close to the other one, it will repel it without touching. We have that capacity through that energy near the third eye. We can expand that and repel the negative projections, thoughts, intentions of other individuals, or if they try to send something to you spiritually, that fire-spitting cobra energy can repel that. That also means conditionings, false ideas, false programming from this culture. Oh, I can't lose weight. Oh, I need a trainer. Oh, I need to spend all this money. Oh, I have to be a special kind of disciplined person in order to lose weight. I'm going to have to be beholden to some trainer, beholden to some program. All that is nonsense. You can burn all of that away. That's not natural for us. We align with the divinity, the force in nature that governs digestion and fuel and expanding fire. And then you get back on track without going through all that other nonsense. So, okay. So we have Susu Hon Ne Adriane. Susu Hon, or Susu in general, is the Akan term for meditation, which we're going to talk about in a second. But it is the reflection, the contemplation, Susu, upon the ahooden, the self. We saw earlier that ahooden means self. The sacred day or da of the divinity Ya is Yada, or Thursday. We talked about Akan, females being born on Thursday are called Ya after the divinity and so forth. Now, even though we're not, we're born on different days, but each one of these divinities impact us in a specific fashion. Let's go up. So I'm born on Awusi Sunday under the governance of the divinity Awusi and so forth. I'm Kwesi, that's my soul name. He governs the endocrine system. So that's the major energy complex. Of course, I have these various other systems, but his energy is dominant and so forth. And in the world, he governs the endocrine system in the great divine body. So that energy complex is the one that's more prominent within myself, although I include all of the other ones. Some people are born under the divinity Benna, the immune system and so forth. So they have an immune system function in creation. So they're the ones who are, policing, defense, military, security, just like the immune system is the security function in the body, the lymphatic system as well, the security law enforcement function in the body. Some people are children of those law enforcement divinities. They're part of the natural immune system within creation. So they have a natural inclination to move towards activities where they're seeking out disorder in the community, and they naturally move towards it to neutralize it and eliminate it. They have that natural inclination, so they move towards occupations where they can exercise that immune function, that policing function, that military function, law enforcement function in our traditional culture and so forth. Some people are natural healers and healeresses. They have that function. They'll be born under, the renal system and so forth. That's just one example. Nana Akua, and they have a natural inclination towards utilizing plants and herbs to heal and so forth. Just like the renal system balances the fluid and mineral balance within the body. So every, we're children of different divinities, forces in creation. We have a natural inclination towards certain activities based, and our phenotype and our personality is an expression of the divinity that governs us. So even as babies, you can see, before the babies know what day they're born on and what their energy complex is, you can see it manifest within them before, they're taught that and so forth. You can see the manifestation of their energy complex. And you can also predict certain things about the way they're going to behave, what kind of challenges they will have, and how to deal with those based on their energy complex. It's all part of a complex and, integrated system. So, but since Yaa governs digestion, the serpent in the body, she's the one we invoke when we're talking about this realigning with the system of fuel and fire of the life force. So, we have a simple ritual to the divinity Yaa, which is Wadjet, which is or Yaa-Wadjet on her sacred day, Thursday, Yada Thursday, to begin the process of realignment for ahooden, which is health, strength, tone, tune, balance. So that simple ritual practice is simply a simple meditation. And we also mentioned diet here as well. Let's talk about that real quick. The name Wadjet, which is the name of the divinity. The root of the name Wadjet is watch, and one of the definitions of watch in ancient Kemet is green. So the papyrus staff that she holds, that scepter, the papyrus plant is the watch plant. And it's also the same spelling of her name and so forth. If you look at the planet Uranus, it has a greenish, bluish hue. So she governs that planet. It has a greenish hue. Just like Benna, the divinity Benna. Ben means red in the Akan language. The planet Benna is the red planet, the planet of war and so forth. Benna and Abena, Heru, Behudet, and Sekhmet govern that red fiery planet, and their sacred colors in ancient Kemet are red and yellow. The green is the greenish hue of the planet Uranus or Yaa. Her name, Watch, in ancient Kemet means green. She holds the green papyrus plant scepter and so forth. But that green includes the importance of plant-based food and medicine. Green is also the color we see in renewal in nature. It takes place after the winter season. Moreover, our star, the sun, the Aten-Atenit, is considered a green star when you study astrophysics and so forth. But Wadjet is as a serpent encircling the Aten-Atenit, the sun, in the imagery of ancient Kemet. We showed that, imagery and so forth. Now, so we'll talk about that section in a minute, but the Adriane or diet section. But with regard to ritual, susu is the term we use for meditation. Now, let me bring up something that we teach in our meditation instructor certification course. One of the documents that we share and examine. And of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. Okay, so let me pull up this document real quick. And some of you, if you've seen some of the recent broadcasts when we talk about meditation, you would have seen this document. We did add something to it since the last time we did a broadcast. We added two things to this document, but this is something that we examine in detail in our course. But so for those of you who have seen it, there are two things that we added since the last time we did a broadcast on it. But just to give a quick breakdown, Susu in the Akan language, this is from the Akan dictionary, the tree dictionary. Susu means to measure. In general, means to measure. To measure the depth of, to calculate the capacity of. But also to think, to imagine, to meditate, to reflect upon, to consider, to contemplate, and so forth. The term for to meditate is the same term for to measure. To measure the capacity of, or calculate the capacity of, to measure the depth of. When you are meditating, you're engaged in a form of measurement. You're measuring the structure of your spirit. You're measuring your thoughts, intentions, and actions against the standard of divine order and so forth, to see if your current thoughts, intentions, and actions are measuring up to that standard. If there's a problem, then you correct yourself, but it's a form of measurement. You're contemplating, reflecting upon, and so forth. That's what Susu is. It's measurement, but that's what meditation is. That's why the word for measurement is also the word for meditation in the Akan tradition. Then you look in ancient NKWAMUA, the root term su, a measure of length. It's reduplicated in Akan, su, to measure. Now, the etymological origin of the term meditate, to think over, reflect, consider. The Proto-Indo-European root, PIE root, as it states, as it shows, is med, which means to take appropriate measures. So the root of meditate is med, to take appropriate measures. And then the root of the term meh, measure, in ancient, well, in the so-called Proto-Indo-European language, phylum, med, to take appropriate measures. You look at the word measure, comes from the Proto-Indo-European root meh, meaning to measure. But they're not Proto-Indo-European roots. They stole these terms from our language. The term meh in ancient Kemet, that predates the existence of Europeans on Earth, is the term for the cubit, which is a central unit of measurement in ancient Kemet. Another spelling of it from a different Medut hieroglyphic dictionary, meh, meaning full measure. So, the ancient Egyptian royal cubit, meh nsu, that is meh nsu, meaning the royal nesu and ensu cubit, is the earliest attested standard measure. So the word meh, the central unit of measurement, just like we have inches and yards and so forth, in English, in ancient Kemet, it's the meh, which was the cubit, but the meh, the central unit of measurement. The term meh was corrupted into meh in Proto-Indo-European and med, to take appropriate measures and so forth, stolen directly from our language. But the key is the function of measuring is what Susu is affecting. The ritual practice of Susu, to reflect upon, to contemplate upon, to consider and so forth, to internally calculate the depth of and the capacity of. You're engaging, when you're doing that, when you're engaged in Susu, you are measuring yourself. You're engaged in meh, or meditation. So that's why Susu means meditation. Now, hold on a second. All right. So this simple meditative practice, and this article is, we'll post the link in the chat room. This is from our WordPress site. Okay, so that is the link in the chat room for the WordPress site for this article. And we have a number of articles. So again, we have 31 books we published. You can download all 31 books for free. But then we have a number of articles as well that we've published. And some of them are on this WordPress site. So when you go to this link, you'll see all of the articles as well. So, but this is the the basic ritual method. So we say a simple ritual to Yaa. If you don't know what your clan is, if you're not Akan and you don't know what your specific clan is, you can utilize the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet. Yaa-Wadjet is her ancient title. So a simple ritual to Yaa or Wadjet on her sacred day, Yada or Thursday, will begin the process of realignment for ahooden, health, strength, tone, tune, balance. You can simply use a printed image of Yaa as a focal point in a clean and quiet space. In other words, you could print out an image of her. If you Google Wadjet, and you can find an image, a nice image of her and so forth. You could print out an image of the planet Yaa, so-called Uranus, but Yaa, as we call it. You can print out an image of her and so forth as a focal point. Now, so this is the simple meditative practice. And I'm going to show you why we say it's a simple meditative practice. Sit upright but relaxed. Close your eyes. Breathe through your nose and diaphragm as opposed to the mouth and primarily the chest. So you're not like breathing through your mouth and chest. You're relaxed and you're breathing through your nose and filling up your diaphragm and breathing that way. Diaphragmatic breathing. Now, each deep breath is an invocation of the name Wadjet and is activating her winged serpent's shrine within you. So you don't have to say the name out loud, but every time you breathe in, you're thinking about the name Wadjet. You can hear that within you and so forth. As you become relaxed and centered, listen for a tune to your heartbeat. Count your heartbeats up to 100 as you inhale and exhale in a relaxed fashion. So what we're talking about is simply when you're ready to engage in some susu, in some meditation. We began the practice of meditation thousands of years before there was a such thing as Hinduism or Buddhism or Taoism or Jainism or any of that. We brought that practice into ancient Khanid and Kemet. Well, from ancient Khanid and Kemet into India and wherever we went in the world. So, in fact, let me just show you an image right quick just so you can see what we're talking about. Because we want to dispel the notion that Eurasians in India or Asia came up with anything, let alone meditation. Because once they start talking about that, then of course they start, creating unnecessary pseudo-elaborate practices that have no basis in spirituality at all. Then people think they have to do all kinds of stretches and all kinds of other nonsense to be spiritual, which is ridiculous. If you look at our flyer right here, this is Amenhotep, the son of Hapu. Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, 3,300, 3,400 years ago, when he lived in Kemet and so forth. He's in the traditional meditative posture. We also have one of the sacred statuary ritual sculptures from the Akan tradition, and she is seated on a throne and so forth. We'll show you that a little bit later in a traditional meditative posture. In fact, let me just show you that right now, just so you can see someone, to get rid of this, misinformation about associated with Hinduism and so forth. So if you hadn't seen our trailer or meditation,
Susu for meditation. Susu originated in our ancestral culture of Afuraitkaitnit.
So that's him.
Afuraitkaitnit.
Regular meditative posture.
Tens of thousands of years ago.
You'll see
This ancient
Ramesu
practice
in the seated posture as
utilized to
well.
regulate physical
And then
and
this is one of the
emotional.
ritual sculptures in the Akan tradition, a sacred ritual statue. But you'll see that's the typical posture. She's seated on a agua, a sacred chair, misnomer stool, a sacred chair, sacred seat, and so forth, in a basic, relaxed susu posture. If she was an Okomfo priestess and so forth, she would have her vessel there, her kuru there as well, and she would be engaging in divination. But even if she's not doing that, if you're seated in a basic posture, seated, relaxed, feet flat on the floor, relaxed and so forth, breathing through the nose, sitting up straight, sitting on your seat and so forth, that is the basic susu posture. We just wanted to show you that. All right. So you clean space. You can use an image of Yaa-Wadjet for a focal point, but then you sit down in a relaxed position. Sit straight so you can breathe freely. You're not slumped over like this. Sit up straight. You don't have to be tense at all, but sit up straight so you can breathe freely, breathing through your nose and your diaphragm and so forth. As you know, if you've ever tried to engage in meditation, sometimes when you first start, you have your eyes closed, you have a lot of thoughts coming in and out. That's because you haven't gotten into that, you haven't tuned in yet. One of the ways to withdraw your focus from the external to the internal, so you can measure the depth of the self, susu, is to begin to attune to and feel your heartbeat. And when you have your eyes closed, it's easier to do, and you start feeling your body pulsing. And once you've attuned to that, then you start counting your heartbeats, count up to 100. And the more you do that and attune to yourself, you're not paying attention to what's going on out there. You're focused internally, and your conscious goes internally. And even if you miss your count, you can start over. But counting, once you get to 100, you'll notice that things begin to calm down. Other things that are happening outside of you are not distracting you any longer because you're focused internally. By the time you get to 100, you can do it once or more than once, and then you're internalized at that point. Now, we say as you become relaxed and centered, listen to your heartbeat, count heartbeats up to 100 as you inhale and exhale in a relaxed fashion. At this stage, when you get to that point, when you counted 100 or more heartbeats, you'll be more receptive and in tune. At that point is when you attune, you ask mentally, Yaa-Wadjet for the direction and empowerment that you need on this wellness journey. And when you're focused on her and you attune to her like that, and you're internalized now and you're blocking out other distractions, the thoughts, images, urges, smells, etc., whatever you experience that arise are messages that you will be able to contextualize later after the ritual is complete. Certain things will come into your awareness. Certain ideas will come into your awareness. Certain thoughts, certain things, you'll be able to contextualize them afterwards. The more you focus on the image of Yaa-Wadjet internally and also the breathing, the more focused and directive her messages or images will become. And you can do that for simply 10 minutes. It can go longer as you do it on a regular basis, but when you feel the ritual is done, you can arise from your seated position. That is a ritual reset. So that basic ritual, try that. Make sure you don't have any food in your stomach. Second. You try that process for in the morning or evening, and do that for just 10 minutes. Take 10 minutes to do that before you start your day, 10 minutes to do that at the end of the day and so forth, and you'll notice a major shift in your focus. You don't have to rely on a trainer. You don't have to rely on these other people and these dietary plans and programs and so forth. When you begin to refocus your consciousness on the divinity that actually governs your digestive tract, the force in creation that whose shrine is your digestive system, and who has that winged serpent energy that governs your magnetosphere and your wind and so forth, you start restructuring yourself and resetting yourself. So it's much easier to adhere to a holistic diet. It's much easier to adhere to a different kind of consumption practice and so forth. You don't need to go to a psychologist or a counselor and all these other things. Now, so then we get into the dietary aspect of it, which is very simple, and you can add things later. But we show how simple it is because they want to make it, as we said earlier, they want to make it appear to be complex. So you're so overloaded with information and believing that you can't move forward without them, that you have to invest in what they're giving you. But it's actually not true. So we talked about Yaa-Wadjet and green and plant-based food and medicine and green colors and so forth. Her name meaning green, watch meaning green, and all that. We say one of the simplest ways to begin the weight loss process, which has worked with numerous people, we have suggested this to over the years, is to start off by simply cutting your portions by 1/2. Thus, if you were eating pizza or pasta for lunch, take your normal serving size like you normally get, cut it in half, throw the other part out, and simply consume that. Avoiding snacks and simply cutting every meal you eat in half will guarantee weight loss. It's impossible for it not to have that impact because you're cutting the portions in half, cutting the calories in half, and so forth. Doesn't matter that you're eating the same thing. When people say, oh, I can't eat any pizza or pasta or this or that because it's going to put on. If you're eating whatever you're eating and you cut half of it and throw the other half away and eat whatever the other half of the pizza, whatever you were eating normally, your body is going to have to adjust, and weight loss is automatically going to begin to take place. And people have done this for over 2 decades when we've suggested this to people. That's one of the easiest ways to start off. Now, that's starting off. As you go through that process, avoiding snacks and so forth, but you can also begin to incorporate more water during the day. When you consume more water, just physically, you're already starting to put, something in your system that's making your body feel full, and you're not able to consume what you would normally consume anyway. But it's also cleansing you out. And when you begin to cleanse yourself out and get rid of some of these toxins and so forth, you'll notice that the desires for certain foods and sugars and different things begin to become diminished. So, but increase fruits, nuts, vegetables, and green foods, and begin to reduce fried foods, meat, and sugary foods. And you're going to naturally be inclined to want to do that anyway, because you're engaged in the meditative practice. You're recentering your focus, recentering your ajwini, your mind, your susu, or sum sum, which is the Akan term for spirit body, which is related to susu and so forth. So mechanically cutting the servings in half is mechanically causing weight loss immediately. Then as you begin to retrain your focus, drinking more water, incorporating more nuts and fruits and so forth, and reducing fried foods over time, your desires, your taste buds begin to change, and you're no longer going to desire those same things that you normally desired before. Your body operates on a circadian rhythm, a chronobiological rhythm. There's certain, just like during the day when the sun is fully, expressive and so forth, and you're externalized and you're ready to go do things, then the sun sets and you cool down and you're more internalized, you go inside and you want to cool down and relax and so forth in the evening and at night and so forth. Same thing happens during the day, during the hour. There's certain peak points of the hour that you're more external, you want to go and consume something, and it's another part of the hour that your body is more internalized. Very often what happens is when we're at that peak of the hour, you'll run downstairs. If you're at an office building and get something from a vending machine or something like that, if you just wait a few minutes for that peak point of the hour to pass, then you'll notice that that appetite diminishes, it disappears. But what happens is when we get hit with that 10 minutes, then we go and consume something, and then you put on more calories and so forth. But noticing that you have a circadian rhythm, chronobiological cycle, there are circadian rhythms that are operating within your body throughout the day, different hours of the day, as well as the full 24-hour day, as well as the 7-day week and so forth, and the yearly cycle, monthly cycle, yearly cycle, and so forth. But even the daily, hourly cycle, you can get past that conditioned craving. At that point in the hour, you wait 5 or 10 minutes, that craving diminishes. And then when you track it, you'll notice there are certain points within the hour that I have some craving, and then it diminishes. And then it rises and diminishes. And just like your body, you have a natural inclination, just like babies have a natural inclination. It's time to feed, it's time to, eliminate, it's time to sleep and so forth. There are cycles. Your body goes through that cycle. If you've conditioned yourself to eat at a certain time and eat snacks at a certain time, or whenever you get hungry, you've been conditioned to, just put something in your system. When you stop doing that, you retrain yourself, and then you don't have a desire to do that anymore. Within a couple of days, you retrain yourself just by changing the behavior. But the way you change the behavior is through going through susu, going within. So the simple process, that susu process, that meditation process, 10 minutes in the morning, you can do 10 minutes in the evening before you go to sleep. You begin to transform yourself immediately and permanently. You're not spending any extra money at all. In fact, you're saving money because you're not, over the next few days, you're not going to be purchasing the same amount of food as you normally would. You would purchase what you normally get, but then you only eat half of it. Then you'll start purchasing only that smaller portion. You're saving money immediately. You're not purchasing diet pills and programs and everything else. You're simply cutting back on the food consumption. And then you're starting to replace things, certain things that you normally would eat. You'll replace them with, certain green foods, fruits, seeds, nuts, other whole grains and things like that, and reducing the fried foods and everything else. So you're saving money immediately. You're not spending anything extra. You're engaged in a ritual process with the divinity that governs digestion to purify yourself on a, daily basis. You start changing your mindset. That's how we do that. And these things, people have had success over the past couple of decades when we've recommended. This is the reason we wrote the article, because we know people have done this over the past 20 plus years. We don't need to feed our enemies' little system, this $66 billion diet industry, for no reason. So, okay. All right. So, any questions on any of that in the chat room? We just wanted to go over that information for you. The article is in there. You can reread the article. Let me show you a couple of other things as well. This is one of our books, Ankh, The Origin of the Term Yoga. Kara, Kasa, The Origin and Nature of the Chakra. So we've shown that particular book that the term yoga comes from the language of ancient Kanita Kemet, comes from the term Ankh or Yonk, which they corrupt into Yonk and Yonka and Yuka and Yuka and Yoga and so forth. The term Kara, Kara in ancient Kemet, which is dealing with a circular shrine and so forth, became Kakra and Chakra in India and so forth. But we show the terms and their cosmology and ritual practice in Kemet thousands of years before Hinduism and Buddhism. So that's one of the free books you can download. So we get rid of these false ideas about what yoga is or meditation and so forth, and go back to what our people established thousands of years before the whites and narrow spring existed upon Earth. So that's one of the texts, one of the books. And when you look through it, and we've examined this book in different courses on our site and so forth. So you'll see a number of different things that we're talking about there. And then we also, you saw the flyer and the a portion of the trailer. We are in the midst of one of our 4-week courses right now, which is going to end actually next week. So this 4-week course ends next week, but the new one is beginning on August 5th. That is the Susu course, Meditation Instructor Certification. So you can be certified as an instructor, a meditation instructor. So once you have that certification after the 4-week course, you can go to schools and businesses and organizations, community centers, and other different places, and you can use your certification for self-employment. People typically pay $100 or $200 or $300 for you to come out and conduct a 30-minute session with youth, or a 30-minute session with, people at a place of business. They have businesses that begun incorporating meditation for increased work productivity for their employees. So they have workshops and they have speakers come out and they'll say, before we have this speaker coming out talking about marketing, we're going to have a 15-minute meditation session. We're going to bring the person out and you come out and you do an introduction. You take them through a meditative session, like 15 or 20 minutes. And then, a short question and answer session. So like a 30-minute process. And they typically pay $100, $200, $300 for that process. For a business or a school, elementary schools have begun incorporating that with young children as well as older, because they notice they do 5 or 10 minutes of meditation right after the first bell at 9 o'clock at the beginning of the day. The children are more focused for the rest of the morning. And then they do it again after lunch when they come in before they start class again, and refocus them so their behavior is better, their focus is better, and so forth. So many schools are incorporating that. They have people come out and do that. Daycare centers, after school programs, as well as colleges, high schools, elementary schools. But then you also have human services organizations, women's shelters, helping the women who are, trying to transition from a domestic violence situation into housing and so forth, and going through anxiety. People who have, therapy groups. It helps with addictions, it helps with a number of different things. So we do it in an introductory fashion. You can take your certification, and let me show you the image of the certification real quick. We graduated a class a couple of weeks ago. So they have their certifications. Hold on one second, let me pull this up. We recently did a YouTube live on this, so you can see that. In fact, the most recent one we did a few days ago. That is up on the channel now. But that's the sample certification. So your name will be here, of course. That's the sample. But once you have your certification, you can utilize that as a credential to teach. Very often when you have, especially when you have human services organizations, schools, certain schools, after school programs, colleges, sometimes you can, teach simply by word of mouth, but most of these places, they have funding sources, and the funding source, they have money set aside for people to come out and do this. So they have a certain amount of money set aside to bring people out to speak, like once a week or once every other week or once a month and so forth. So, but their funding sources require some form of credential. So if you say, yes, I'm certified to teach meditation, they're like, okay, you got the credential. They see your certificate, then, they can cut the check for you. So, and that's the reason that we put it forward. We've taught this for over 20 years. We first published on Susu, on meditation, from an Afuraitkaitnit cultural grounded perspective, original perspective, with the Patas Asatim book that we published 20 years ago. We were teaching it first, and then we put the book out 19 years ago. That includes one of the segments, one of the modules includes Susu meditation, the Setiye module, as a matter of fact. So we were teaching it in that context, but we didn't start certifying people until this year. And the reason we did that is, number one, because people were asking about it. Number two is because people were being forced to go to these Hindu organizations or other, white New Age organizations. They charge them thousands of dollars very often for a certification. And then they have to pay them a large amount of money for a certification just so they'll get some accurate information and a lot of misinformation, but they need that, certification, that credential in order to, employ themselves to become entrepreneurs. So they're forced to go outside of our culture to get something that actually came from our culture. Susu began with us. So that's why we started doing the certification. We've been teaching it for 20 years, but as far as certifying people, we started doing that this year. So, but the next certification course begins August 5th, which is a Monday night. So if you want to get in on that course, you can register. We have a split payment option if you would like to do it that way. You can pay 50% down to secure your spot, and then the other 50% in a couple of weeks. That's all on the website, the Susu page on the website. And I'll put the link in the chat room for that. Hold on a second. All right. So the link in the chat room is this is the link right here. And the other thing is we also have an option where you can receive a referral fee. You can receive $100. You can receive that tonight or tomorrow simply by referring our course to someone. And once they register and they pay the registration fee, and once they pay their registration fee, because you are the one who referred them, then we'll send you $100 for referring them. If you send 2 people, we'll send $200. If you send 5 people, we'll send you $500. And that's just a way to, you can reach people that we don't have access to. So many small businesses do that. So let me just show you that image. We did a live on that, talking about that process. And it's on our YouTube page. So I just want you to see which one that is. This is it right here. So when we did the Heteru Hosso or Nehesi live, we did that like maybe a week and a half ago. You'll see it on the YouTube page. This is the flyer for that. But that's what we were talking about. So even if you're not ready to take the course yourself now, you can still get the referral fee. So you refer someone to the course. Once they register and pay the fee, then we will PayPal you or Venmo or Zelle you the $100 referral fee. The only stipulation is we only teach our course to our people, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people exclusively. So we're not teaching any non-Black people Susu. So that's the only stipulation. All right. Okay, so any questions on any of that information before we log out? Have any questions in the chat room? Okay. All right, so if you do have any questions, think of something, you would email us via, email on the website, on the Susu page on the website, and so forth. Now, hold on a second. Okay, so how do you learn the different poses that you teach? Now which you're saying poses, which poses are you referencing? And let me show, while you're responding to that, let me show something that we mentioned in the book real quick. This is, okay, so in the Ankh book, we showed you one of the Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, and he's seated, in the traditional posture and so forth. But you also see the different divinities seated in this particular posture. And this is the traditional common meditative posture. You see all these deities here on the papyrus seated in that fashion with the knees up. You see the scribe Neb Merutef, the sacred animal totem of Tahuti, the Anan, or the sacred, baboon, the sacred animal totem, which is a spirit. So he's sitting, communicating with the spirit and so forth. That spirit communication, you see his legs crossed in this context. But he's sitting in the process of susu, meditation, and he's communicating with the spirit. This is where these traditional postures come from. Then you see the traditional posture. You see all of the divinities at some point seated in this posture, the same sacred posture of the sacred Anan, so-called baboon, and so forth. You see the divinity Ma'at seated in this posture. You see Sin and Mut seated in this posture and so forth. One of the reasons that sacred Achinebwa, or Anan, the baboon, is a sacred animal totem of the Nsamanfo, the Nanonoma Nsamanfo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors of our people and so forth. So you'll see that our postures come from the sacred animal totems, the sacred Achinebwa, whether you see the seated posture, which is the typical posture across the board. Sometimes you'll see the standing posture, like on one leg and so forth, and you'll see the habui bird, or the so-called crane or ibis, standing in that portion, in that capacity, in that fashion. So the original postures in that context come from the Achinebwa, the sacred animal totems. All right. So, and once again, we show the, etymological origin of the term kakra, kara in ancient Kemet, which becomes kakra, as you can see here, kakra, also chakra. But the root is kara, which means shrine or sanctuary of a divinity. This is one of those kara shrines, and a kara is a shrine or a sanctuary. And of course, in the body, those shrines are found in the 7 kasu, or the 7 magical knots. And those 7 magical knots found in the rituals of Kemet are these 7 knots, the nerve ganglia that are physical seats of the 7 kakra centers and so forth. So we go into all of that in the book. Okay, that book is on the NKWAMUA page on the website, so let me just this is the NKWAMUA page on the website. And when you go to the NKWAMUA page, and I'll just go back to that for everybody. The link is in the chat room, but the NKWAMUA page, and as you see this, even if you Google Ojidafo, which is my title, and NKWAMUA, you'll see that page pop up at the top on Google, NKWAMUA, which means book in the Akan language. And when you scroll down, you'll see that we have the covers of all 31 of the books I published to date. And as you scroll through, you'll see So here you'll see, here's the Ankh book. When you click on that one, it takes you to the page for the book. When you scroll down further, you click on the cover and it'll take you directly to the book. Some of the other ones, they will either take you to the page for the book and then you can get the book from that page, or as soon as you click on the book itself, it'll immediately take you, it'll immediately open up the book. So it's the NKWAMUA page on the website. All right. Okay, second. Okay, so in that, so when we were going over so you teach proper breathing techniques to help people go deeper into meditation. So this is what we were referencing in the article talking about the divinity Yaa-Wadjet, and part of that utilizing her name and image, invoking divinity Wadjet, breathing through the nose and through the diaphragm and so forth. That's the basic principle. It's not, in reality, it's really not more elaborate than that. When people are teaching Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism and Taoism and so forth, that's an empty practice. Susu, or meditation, has always been about us aligning with and communing with the divinity that governs our head, our matriclan divinity, which is a female divinity, the patriclan divinity, which is a male divinity, and the divinity that governs our head, as well as our spiritually cultivated class of ancestresses and ancestors of our specific clans. So the deities that govern us, head, matriclan, and patriclan, as well as our clan ancestresses and ancestors who are that class, who are, slated to assist us in our development. The whites and their offspring can't communicate with any divinities, so they're just sitting there breathing and doing physical, movements and so forth that they imitated from our people, but they don't have the capacity to communicate with the Orisha, the Abosom, Vodou, and so forth. They don't have any spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. They don't have a class of ancestral spirits like that. So their practice is empty. So they start trying to engage in different kinds of elaborate movements and so forth and breathing techniques. But it doesn't matter what the breathing technique is. If you can't communicate with the divinity because you don't have a divinity that governs your head, like the whites and their offspring, then it doesn't matter what technique you're engaged in. That's like if you have a cell phone, if you have a connection, you can talk to somebody. If the connection is made, you can talk to somebody. If the phone is off, it doesn't matter how you hold the phone or the way you talk into the phone or what you say, or if the connection is not there, you're not going to talk to anybody. We can communicate with the forces in nature because we're children of these divinities. The whites and their offspring cannot do that, so it doesn't matter how they breathe, how they sit, what movements they engage in. All they're doing is just moving around electromagnetic energy. And if you do that, if somebody normally doesn't do that, and then they engage in some kind of ritual movement, it feels different. So it seems like they're doing something spiritual, but it's really just no different than two magnets, as we said, on the table with the like polarities facing, and when they get close, they push each other. But if you engage in certain movements like Qigong and Tai Chi and things like that, and you move some electromagnetic energy around, you're just moving energy around. That's not what ritual practice is. Ritual practice is aligning with the divinities that govern creation, the embodiments of divine order in creation. We can communicate with them. We get possessed by them. They possess us and align us and teach us and guide and admonish and so forth. They can't do that. So they're just moving energy around. They're just no different than doing Pilates or something, or, so. But the basic breathing technique gets you to the point where you have the capacity and the focus to communicate with the divinities that govern you and your clan ancestresses and ancestors. That's the point you get to. Okay. but yes, but those basic movements and so forth, ultimately you'll see that they come from sacred animals. And then when you see ritual dance we talk about this in our Uben Sheng course, but when you see ritual dance in Afuraitkaitnit culture, whether it's on the continent or in the hoodoo tradition in North America and so forth, and you see people moving in the form of certain animals and so forth, where they get possessed by a divinity and their body moves in the form of a snake or a lion or whatever it is. These are sacred animal totems, Chinebwa animal totems and so forth. The animals carry, a fiery animal will carry the energy of a fiery divinity. A watery animal will carry the energy of a river divinity and so forth. So, and we are the human totems for the forces in nature. So some of us are children of fiery divinities and we have a fiery personality and energetic output. Some people more cool and receptive and are children of river divinities and we have that kind of cool energy. And some people are children of earth divinities and so forth. So we're the human totems. There are animal totems for these forces in creation. There are plant totems for these forces in creation. There are mineral totems for these forces in creation. But when you talk about these sacred movements, the movements only come from the animal realm and human realm. And, many of these sacred movements track back to the animal totems that are expressions of these divinities. Okay. All right, so we are at 2 hours already. So we're going to go ahead and end it here. Yet I say we thank everybody for tuning in once again. But once again, if you would like to join the new certification course, we start August 5th, so we have a few spots still available for that. If you would like to do the referral fee aspect, all you have to do is, well, number one, refer the course, but then you have to let us know who it is that you referred. They can let us know, or you need to let us know, this is the person that came through me. And once we know who's who, then we can forward the funds to you. Okay. Okay, so once again, yet I say we thank everybody for joining in with us. And Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again.